Before we get started, there'll be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach and the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World in the video to come. The light novel Can't Fear Your Own World did a lot to expand the lore of Bleach, including shifting the focus onto some of the series' more forgotten factions. Perhaps the greatest example of this is none other than the Fullbringers, characters like Ginjo and Tsukishima, who were criminally overlooked in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, get plenty to do here, and Ginjo's storyline in particular is engaging and revealing. In fact, the way the novel incorporates these characters and gives them so much more to do, sheds so much more light on them, is one of my favourite things about it. But it's not just them. The original organisation of Execution, once led by Ginjo during the Lost Agent arc, is revived too, this time with a sinister new purpose, and a cult leader-like figure at its helm to show it the way. That character is none other than the topic of today's video, Aura Michibane, an original creation of the light novel, a major player in the events that unfold, and perhaps the single strongest Fullbringer in Bleach. But who is Aura? What's her goal? And perhaps most importantly, what makes her the strongest Fullbringer in the series? Aside from, assumedly, Ichigo, of course, I suppose. What role does this unique character play in the light novel? And overall, how does she fare as a character in comparison to other light novel exclusive creations? Let's take a look and find out. So let's start with that first question. Who is Aura? Born to a Fullbringer father, Aura's mother died in childbirth after being attacked by a hollow, which was drawn to Aura thanks to the piece of the Soul King residing inside her. In a misguided and desperate effort to keep his daughter safe from the perceived evils of the outside world after his wife's death, Aura's father then kept her hidden away as a young girl, forcing her to live a sheltered life of brutal isolation. During this time, Aura spent her formative years locked within a basement, learning only to read, write, and train her Fullbringer abilities in case the need ever arose for her to defend herself. Interestingly, Fullbring normally manifests itself out of attachment to something, whether that's an object or otherwise, enabling the Fullbringer to draw on a power unique to that object, alongside the standard Fullbringer abilities that they can train. However, due to the strange nature of her upbringing, Aura never developed any attachments to anything. Instead, rather than having a unique Fullbringer of her own, the likes of which we saw in the source material, something like Book of the End or Dollhouse, for example, Aura only has access to the most basic of Fullbringer abilities, without that individual bespoke power that sets other Fullbringers apart from one another. And yet, due to having spent her entire childhood honing these powers, as well as then later training her power even further by killing hollows, and then the truth that she is in fact the vassal for the Seketsu, the chain of fate of the Soul King himself, Aura's basic Fullbring abilities are unmatched, and her raw power is immeasurable. Thanks to these incredible abilities, Aura is capable of manipulating the souls of any matter before her, enabling her to transfigure just about anything to her liking. These abilities, which appear divine from the outside, began to be referred to as miracles, and they helped facilitate the cult of personality that she would later build around herself. Aura herself even refers to them as such, and notes that it was thanks to her incredible, awe-inspiring abilities that the Execution cult was able to grow to over 700,000 members so quickly. Due to Aura's apathy towards the world, probably an understandable perspective to have after her upbringing, she was an easy target for the villain of Can't Fear Your Own World, Tokinada, to eventually manipulate, bringing her over to his side. But, as the story would show, as Aura's nice character arc would demonstrate, she is inherently a kind person, simply looking for something real to actually love and care about, something to protect, like how her father thought he was protecting her for many years. The difference, however, is that when Aura comes across Hikone, the young child being used as a pawn at the nexus of Tokinada's schemes, and they begin to see her as a somewhat motherly figure, Aura decides to try and give them a better life than the one she had and avoid the mistakes of her father. Aura's an interesting character then. Despite her raw power as this almost godlike Fullbringer, she feels strangely neutral, incredibly placid, which fits with her empty view of the world. She's positioned as an antagonist in the novel initially, yes, but she's clearly being misled. Tokinada offers her a place among his game, wanting to repaint the world anew, though Aura notes that she has no desires herself at all. Interestingly, the novel does frame Aura as being ensnared by Tokinada from the very start, and she is also considered his victim. By the end of Can't Fear Your Own World, Aura finds a place for herself in the universe of Bleach that feels a little unexpected, but I actually quite like it. Speaking then of her seemingly limitless power, what exactly can Aura do? How is she separated from the rest of the Fullbringers that we've seen and know well from the source material? What makes her seem virtually unstoppable? First of all, while Can't Fear Your Own World reveals that all Fullbringers actually house pieces of the Soul King, Aura in particular, as mentioned earlier, is the host of the Soul King Saketsu, his Chain of Fate, which of course is a fundamental aspect of all spirits, even Shinigami. And in Shinigami in particular, the Saketsu, or the area where the Saketsu would be, acts as a vital, fragile pressure point for a Shinigami's power, which perhaps goes some way to explaining why her Ryoryoku is so immense. It's almost like she's tapping into the Soul King's own wellspring. To be honest though, I find the idea of the Soul King even having a Saketsu to be a little weird. I suppose it makes sense from a fundamental, baseline lore of the Bleach universe point of view, but he was born into a world where the cycle of rebirth didn't even exist, and to go beyond that, he was born into the world as a kind of divine being. I guess in that primordial time, pluses could still become hollows, as hollows did exist. They must have come from somewhere. But then, would there even be pluses at all if the cycle of rebirth doesn't exist? Regardless, the fact is that Kisuke Urahara considers Aura's strength to be on the level of a Shinigami who could use Hakuda and Kido to the same degree as none other than Aizen himself, though admittedly stops short of saying Aura is actually as strong as Aizen. Still, this gives her incredible destructive and magical potential, the likes of which would likely outmatch a lot of even captain-level fighters. In regards to her Fullbring itself though, Aura has, through no choice of her own, foregone her own unique Fullbring in order to have blanket control over almost everything else in the world. Remember, the essence of Fullbring lies in controlling the souls of matter. As Ginjo once told Ichigo, everything has a soul, both animate and inanimate, and so Fullbringers can pull power and strength from anywhere, manipulating anything to their need if able. Aura takes that philosophy and amplifies it massively. For example, she can use Fullbring on herself to turn her body intangible, including going so far as to sever her own head, letting it float through the sky before reattaching it with no discernible damage. To turning her own body into smoke, enabling her to escape any kind of binding. These powers sound absurd, like they would defy even logic itself, particularly removing her own head. But when you think about Fullbring at its base level, the power to freely manipulate souls, it does make a little more sense, though again, it's a bit strange to me that she's able to do things like removing her head, considering Aura is ostensibly still just a human. But it all comes down to her having complete control over every aspect, every facet of her body, from her blood to her skeletal structure, allowing her to metamorphise without limit. And unsurprisingly, with such deft control over her own body, her own form, Aura is also able to use her powers to heal virtually any injury. Really then, with Aura, what we're seeing is what would happen when a Fullbringer is essentially able to take their power to the extreme, to use their power without limit, perhaps the end game for all Fullbringers. And it does kind of make me wonder if maybe Fullbringers would be more powerful if they went this route, though I know it's going to be virtually impossible for someone to not develop an attachment to anything. Although that's interesting in and of itself as well. Say, for example, a Fullbringer did go through what Aura went through, but they were just given, I don't know, some random piece of paper or something like that to play with. That was the only thing they got. Would they develop an attachment to that somehow? And then would that lay the foundation for their Fullbring? So what I'm trying to say is, where Fullbringers are concerned, could their power theoretically be anything? The Fullbringers that we see as part of Execution, none of them go through anything like Aura has been through, so presumably they had the liberty to become attached to whatever they wanted and then take their power from that. For example, you know, Ginjo has his necklace, that's clearly something personal to him. Yukio has his PSP, for example. But Aura doesn't have anything like that. But if she was given something that she then became attached to, even if it was something was like seemingly worthless, like a pen or a piece of paper or something like that, would her Fullbring then stem from that? And that also kind of makes me wonder as well. Aura was said to only really be taught, you know, how to read and write and that sort of thing. So was there nothing in that basement that she grew even remotely attached to at all? Because if you're in a basement with absolutely nothing else for, what was it? I think it's about 10 years or something like that, if not a bit longer. I feel like if you had a pen or something, you would grow attached to it after time. So it's kind of weird to think. It makes me question how Fullbring itself really functions, how it really comes to be. But I mean, having said that, I imagine it's possible for a Fullbringer to achieve this level of control, even if they have their own unique ability as well, if they train hard enough and for long enough, but we don't find out. I feel like I kind of worded that a little badly. It was mostly just a rambling stream of consciousness. Basically, the essence of what I'm trying to say here is it feels to me like Fullbring could potentially stem from anywhere and anything depending on your circumstances. It feels hard to believe that Aura was attached to absolutely nothing after about 10 years or so in isolation. But for example, Aura can do absolutely crazy, mind-blowing things. Using her own blood and pulling from the soul of the iron within, Aura manifests an army of deep, dark, blood-red, serpentine, oriental dragons, and then continues this draconic trend as she battles Kisuke. By manipulating the moisture in the atmosphere, Aura creates essentially an ocean of water above the sky, using it to summon a fearsome dragon made of liquid, while also conjuring a second dragon made of magma beside it, pulling forth the power surging beneath the earth itself, generating elemental dragons of her own that are powerful enough to clash with Kisuke's Hado 99, Goryu Tenmetsu, the two of them cancelling each other out. And then when Kisuke fires Hado 91 at her, using the very air around her, Aura is capable of conjuring barriers to protect herself, as well as using the air to increase her range, enabling her to grapple things from afar and even hold back immensely huge and heavy falling objects. And so, just from those few short examples, you can see that her power is almost unquantifiable, but it does have a weakness. Aura can only use these powers so long as she still has some Ryoryoku in the tank, and will react extremely badly if she tries to do so without a sufficient supply. From doubling over and coughing violently to even being unable to heal at all, a flaw that eventually kills her, Aura's power becomes a balancing act of sorts, which can be thrown off by the likes of Yumichika's Ruryoku Jaku. But here's the thing, Aura's power is cool and all, and it's interesting getting to see a Fullbringer really let loose with the upper limits of their inherent ability, but, and this is just my own personal opinion, I don't think it feels all that original, especially not in the continuity of the light novels, especially not if you've read Spirits Are Forever With You. It feels extraordinarily similar to the power of another light novel character, Azashiro and his Urozakuro, the constant bankai that essentially fuses him with his surroundings, allowing him to freely manipulate, well, all matter. And again, weapons like Yumichika's true Shikai are the downfall of that ability too. But as you can see, Aura's powers are incredible in their own right. So how are they used within the story? What's her role in Can't Fear Your Own World as a supporting antagonist? This is just a brief overview, but Aura plays a large part in shaping the conflict to come and aiding Tokinada with his plan. One day, Aura's father brings her news in her isolation. A substitute Shinigami called Ginjo Kugo was trying to bring together the disparate Fullbringers spread across the world and remove their powers for them, transforming them into simple humans. This backstory is of course referenced in the actual Lost Agent arc itself as well, but considering all of the unreliable narrators going around, it was never entirely certain, A, whether it was really true or not, or B, exactly what was true and what wasn't, who was actually involved and how. But wanting this future for himself and his daughter, Aura's father went to this supposed meeting and never returned. In truth, the Suna Yashiro family, the scheming, devious, noble house of soul society to which the novel's villain Tokinada belongs, wanted to extract the pieces of the Soul King from the Fullbringers for themselves, and so gathered them in one place in order to kill them and take that collective power. Left alone and by this point dying of starvation, eventually Aura's Fullbring powers manifested out of necessity to save her life, obliterating the basement she was trapped in and setting her free at last. Eventually taken in by relatives of her deceased mother, Aura slowly grew accustomed to the real world, though had to endure years of near constant slander against her father. When Tokinada approached a vulnerable Aura, he revealed to her that his family killed her father. But upon witnessing her reaction and her overall indifference towards the world, Tokinada decided he could use her, and so brought her over to his side. Tokinada quickly puts Aura to work, having her steal the Tenkai Ketchu prototype before accumulating hundreds of thousands of followers, quickly creating a brand new religion in the world of the living. I do think this is quite a cool element to the story, and also nice foreshadowing for Tokinada's ultimate plan. Simply by revealing some of her powers, which admittedly even by Bleach standards are quite amazing, to otherwise unknowing humans, they all began to worship her like a god, and it completely turned their lives upside down, which it probably would do, and that's exactly what Tokinada wants to do by revealing to humans the existence of the afterlife. Tokinada then has her build an enormous castle, and with the followers and the castle now accounted for, Tokinada only needed one more thing: a suitable king. Giving Aura access to countless corpses of all the different races, Tokinada asked her to build him what he desired. And although she, along with the help of Seinosuke Yamada, was able to put something together, it was an unliving abomination that could barely do anything. A hybrid, yes, but a totally unstable one. However, once Tokinada acquired the brain of Gremi Thamo from the remnants of the war against the Vandenreich, Hikone was complete. For now, this meant nothing to Aura, but later the creation of Hikone would prove to be her undoing, and at the same time her awakening also. In an early battle against both Kisuke and Hisagi, which we've already referenced, where Aura shows off a lot of her skills, she seals Karakura Town within a barrier, noting her intention to make Karakura Town the capital of the new Soul King. Aura later has the chance to speak with other Fullbringers, Ginjo, Tsukishima, and Giriko, with Ginjo questioning why she would ever choose to work with a Shinigami like Tokinada. Showing her naivety, Aura simply says that Tokinada wants to create a world where the Fullbringers get to be on top again, where they can be predators once more, and no longer prey. During the large-scale battle that then takes place, Aura eventually betrays Tokinada, hoping to save Hikone from their fate as the new Soul King. It's revealed that Aura began to lose her apathetic view of the world when she created Hikone, bringing the child to life and watching them live and breathe. Ultimately, it changed her, and although she still has no loyalty to the Shinigami and their allies, she decided to work against Tokinada's machinations in order to save Hikone's life, and for that reason alone. When Aura expends an immense amount of her energy in order to prevent the collapsing false palace from falling to Karakura town far below, Hisagi comes to her aid, defending her from a confused Hikone who has been ordered by Tokinada to kill her. However, when the blade Ikomikido Moe attempts to kill Hikone, Aura leaps between them and has her entire side gouged out, a little bit like Matsumoto when faced with Ion. It is kind of interesting to see that fate perhaps had this in store for Aura all along. In the end, she was killed by a hollow, albeit a very, very strange one, but it was still the death that her father was so desperate to keep her away from. Unable to heal herself due to having spent most of her power, Aura dies, disappearing into a Garganta and taking the palace debris with her. Hikone wonders why she saved them, why she went to such effort, but Hisagi notes that she made the choice herself, perhaps the first choice she has ever made of her own volition in her life. But Aura's story doesn't end there, and she reawakens in Waco Mundo, wondering how she could have survived that attack before accepting the likelihood that she'll just bleed to death here on the sands. Aura then notices several Arrancar gathering around her. She's being healed by Roka Paramia, again of Spirits Are Forever With You fame, while Neliel introduces herself and explains to Aura that while they were able to rescue her almost diminished spirit, her human body has indeed died. Pesce and Dondachaka prepare some food, and the Arrancar all sit down for a meal, including Harabel and Picaro. With nowhere else to go, Aura is invited to stay with the Arrancar by Nell, and they all share the food together. Honestly, it's a really nice ending for the character, and like I said earlier on, it's a place I didn't expect her to end up. But again, I think it's really, really cool, and it paints Waco Mundo, the new version of Waco Mundo, this more civilized version of the Hollow's world, as this almost refuge for the damned, a place where people who don't belong anywhere else can come and now be looked after under the protection of Harabel and Neliel. And I think post the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and of course the changes after the end of the Arrancar arc, that's a really cool place for Waco Mundo to be. Now, like I said, that's a Cliff Notes version of Aura's overall role in the story, but it's an impactful role nonetheless. Aura enjoys a satisfying character arc as we watch her go from a totally emotionless blank slate, essentially to someone who finds something worth fighting for, something worth breaking free of her emotional bondage, and something that enables her to make a decision of her own, even if it costs her everything in the end. And so, with all of that said and done, how does Aura kind of compare to other light novel exclusive characters? Honestly, I like her. I think she's got a great design. It's simplistic, but I love the kind of black suit look. Again, it goes very well with the other characters of Execution from the Lost Agent arc. She looks like she would have fit in pretty much perfectly with the rest of the gang. So I think that's really cool. It's simplistic, but honestly, I just love the fact that she is very unique looking as well in her own right, which is something that I always really appreciate. And as far as her personality goes, you know, maybe it's not the most interesting in the world, but it does stem from a realistic place. She's not a blank emotionless slate for no reason. She has suffered a lot of hardship in the past. She has come from a place of isolation, and that has really worn off on her, and I think that's a really cool character choice, and it's really nice to see her kind of blossom essentially and take steps to taking control of her own life, even if it does mean her eventual death. I suppose in Aura's eyes, that would have been a life worth living, in the end a choice worth making. And so I think overall the character is pretty cool, a nice addition to the lore. Not the most original power set, like I said. Apart from that, I think it's cool how strong she is, the way she dukes it out with characters like Urahara. I love all of that, and so I think the character is ultimately a success overall, even if she isn't the most standout new character of Can't Fear Your Own World. I suppose for me, that would have to be Tokinada, and we'll do a video dedicated to him at some point in the future too. But that's it for this fairly brief video on the character of Aura. I hope you found it interesting, I hope you found some value in it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, how you feel about the character of Aura. Do you enjoy her character? What do you think about her powers, her abilities, the way she uses Fullbring? Is she the strongest Fullbringer in the series? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Your support means the absolute world to me. If you want to support me over on Patreon, you can do just that to get your name in the credits like this, and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. But until next time, guys, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.